Where did Jack Ma go? And what really happened to the empire he built? To answer that, you have to start long before Alibaba was a tech juggernaut. Back when a skinny kid named Ma Yun pedaled a bicycle across Hangzhou at dawn just to practice English with hotel tourists. One of those visitors struggled with Yun, shrugged and said, "I'll call you Jack." The nickname stuck. So did the habit. Every morning ride, every awkward conversation, every tiny step toward a bigger world that didn't yet know his name. He wasn't the prodigy type. He failed entrance exams, got rejected by schools and jobs, and learned how to lose without quitting. In the 1990s, he parlayed his English into a translator's business trip to the US, sat down at a computer, typed beer, and discovered there were no Chinese brands online. If the internet was a map of the world, China barely existed on it. He went home carrying a simple, dangerous idea. Put China's small businesses on that map. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In 1999, inside a cramped Hangzhou apartment, he gathered 17 friends, spoke for 2 hours, and asked them to gamble their savings on a marketplace that didn't exist yet. They put in roughly $60,000. Months later, a real bet arrived. Goldman Sachs led a $5 million round, the first institutional signal that this scrappy site might be more than a dream. Soon after, Masayoshi Son's SoftBank added $20 million and, more importantly, unshakable belief. Those early checks didn't just buy servers, they bought time. Alibaba's first act wasn't flashy. It was B2B. Connect China's factory owners to global buyers, digitize trade show brochures and fax machines, replace cold calls with searchable listings. The site took root because it felt local. The language, cadence and customer support sounded like home. Still, the dot-com winter bit hard. Competitors vanished. Alibaba tightened costs, survived, and learned a lesson that would shape every expansion. Trust is the currency. Software is just the mint. Then came the street fight that made the brand. In 2003, eBay bought EachNet and marched into China with global swagger. Jack launched Taobao and did the opposite. No listing fees, warm customer service, live chat between buyer and seller, and a new idea called Alipay. Escrow the money until the buyer says, "Yes, this is what I ordered." In a low-trust environment, that escrow switch flipped the market. In 2 years, Taobao surged while eBay China stumbled. By late 2006, eBay retreated into a joint venture and effectively exited the stage. The street had chosen. Alipay wasn't just a convenience, it was an answer to a national question. Can I trust a stranger on the other end of a screen? Launched in 2004, it institutionalized trust and lubricated the entire marketplace. Years later, in a move that would haunt investor relations, Alipay's ownership was controversially shifted out of Alibaba Group to secure a domestic license amid evolving regulations, triggering public objections from major shareholders and forcing a negotiated settlement. But the core product kept spreading from desktop to mobile, from checkout to financial super app. Alibaba's culture fused village grit with showmanship. Jack loved stages and metaphors, but the operating engine was ruthless. Build platforms, take the friction out, and let sellers and buyers do the compounding. To more elevated brands, Cainiao moved parcels with eerie efficiency. A fledgling cloud business, born to host Alibaba's own traffic storms, learned to sell its resilience to others. And then came the holiday that dwarfed holidays. Singles Day, 11.11, part carnival, part shopping war room, a sales supernova bigger than Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined in certain years. The numbers were spectacle. The infrastructure underneath was the point. All of that momentum culminated on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in September 2014, when Alibaba rang the bell and raised $25 billion, the largest IPO in history at the time. It wasn't just a listing. It was a statement that the Hangzhou apartment dream belonged on a global scoreboard. Overnight, Alibaba became one of the world's most valuable companies, and Jack Ma became the symbol of China's private sector rise. The next chapter looked even bigger. Alipay had grown into Ant Financial, later Ant Group, a fintech hydra spanning payments, wealth products, micro-lending, and credit scoring. In 2020, Ant prepped a dual listing in Shanghai and Hong Kong that was set to eclipse Alibaba's own record. Then, days after Jack delivered a high-profile speech in Shanghai criticizing outdated financial regulation, the market received an unprecedented shock. Regulators summoned Ant's leaders. New rules on micro-lending landed. the Shanghai Exchange suspended the IPO, citing significant changes in the regulatory environment. The Hong Kong leg followed. The biggest IPO in the world became the biggest IPO that wasn't. What followed was not a single event, but a long recalibration. In April 2021, China's market regulator fined Alibaba a record 18.2 billion yuan for abusing market dominance with its choose one from two exclusivity practices and ordered sweeping changes. In July 2023, the central bank capped a multi-year rectification of Ant with a 7.12 billion yuan fine and a new regulatory perimeter, signals that the era of burn-hot growth without tight financial oversight was over. And Jack? He stepped off stage. After the Ant suspension, he receded from public life, spotted abroad here and there, a symbol, fairly or not, of the new distance between China's private titans and power. In March 2023, he quietly returned to China for a school visit, a sighting that suggested a thaw, if not a full return to the spotlight. Inside Alibaba, the show went on differently. The group reorganized into 6 business units with their own P&Ls, a decentralization designed to speed decisions and unlock future listings. Leadership shifted, plans for a cloud IPO wavered, e-commerce arms were consolidated to face rising challenges like Pinduoduo, Temu, and ByteDance's commerce machine. The company moved from celebrity founder aura to operator era, with a target on efficiency, compliance, and relentless competition. The question, though, isn't just corporate, it's personal. What really happened to Jack Ma? The short answer is that he met the limit of founder celebrity in a system where finance is sovereignty. When Ant blurred the line between tech and banking, touching deposits, credit and investment products at national scale, regulators asserted primacy. Jack's speech didn't cause the wave, it revealed the fault line. Ant's IPO halt, Alibaba's antitrust fine, and the re-engineering of fintech rules were parts of the same message. Growth would continue, but on terms set by the state. Jack adapted by lowering his profile and divesting control levers, while the businesses adapted by becoming more bank-like, more regulated, and in some units more ordinary. None of that erases the rise. The kid who guided tourists for free English became the founder who taught millions of small merchants to sell beyond their postcode. The B2B directory became a retail bazaar. The bazaar became a logistics web. The web became a financial nervous system, and then learned its oversight lessons in public. The 2014 IPO turned Alibaba into shorthand for China's internet. The 2020 reversal turned Ant into shorthand for the limits of that internet. The company's story is also a playbook in product judo. When trust was scarce, Alipay's escrow did the convincing. When Western incumbents came to conquer, Taobao made itself a home for sellers with free listings and real-time chat. When rivals scaled, Alibaba engineered shopping itself into entertainment. Gala countdowns, gamified coupons, influencer live streams that felt like television. When mobile swamped desktop, the super app logic, search, shop, pay, ship, kept users inside a loop they wanted to stay in. And when the wind shifted, the group learned to operate under different rules without losing its commercial instinct. There's one more thread that makes the saga feel almost mythic. Jack's genius was never coding. It was translation between eras, languages, and appetites. He translated Western venture capital into a Chinese small merchant revolution. He translated the chaos of street markets into the order of escrow and ratings. He translated a festival for single college kids into a national shopping phenomenon. And later, when the translation no longer worked between private ambition and public risk, he translated himself into absence. Today, if you walk through a Taobao live stream studio at midnight, it feels less like a store and more like a TV station. If you stand in a Cainiao hub as trucks tumble in, you hear commerce as an orchestra. If you open Alipay at a noodle shop and pay with a tap, you don't think about how the rails were built. That is Alibaba's triumph, making the extraordinary feel mundane. And it is Jack Ma's paradox. The louder the system hums, the less the founder matters to its daily song. So what really happened to Jack Ma and Alibaba? The rise is easy. A poor kid turned translator turned founder, early bets from Goldman Sachs and SoftBank. A street fight with eBay won by empathy and escrow, a record-breaking IPO. The pivot is harder. A fintech rocket that hit regulatory airspace. An antitrust fine that redrew the map. A founder who learned there are rooms even legends cannot command. The result is neither a fairy tale nor a cautionary tale. It is something more modern, a company that graduated from personality cult to operating system, a founder who went from everywhere to elsewhere, a reminder that in China, where finance is the bloodstream of the state, scale invites supervision and supervision shapes destiny. And if you're still looking for the man himself, every so often he surfaces, teaching, visiting schools, offering clipped optimism about technology, appearing at an anniversary to talk about AI and the next stage of fintech. He smiles more softly now, like someone who knows how fast the weather can change. His empire hums on without him, redesigned to run under new rules. The kid on the bicycle would recognize the feeling. Tomorrow is uncertain, but it's still worth pedaling toward.